Good morning.
Good morning.
God be with you. I'm sorry, that should have been God be with you. I can't read my understudy's writing. From now on, if I say God be with you, please assume that I mean God be with you. I am the quite Reverend Dimbly Rumble. I'm moderately honored to be here today to take a moment to mull upon the reflection of the observation of the retirement of the Venerable Bruce Morris. Now, some of you may be wondering who I am, and others may not be too familiar with the designation quite Reverend. Well, in regards to the former statement, I am the son of the very, very Reverend Dufferin Rumble. In regards to the latter statement, the quite Reverend is more important than just being merely venerable. So in the eyes of the church, I am more important. And I get a bigger hat. But being quite Reverend is not as important as my father, the very, very Reverend Dufferin Rumble, but is not quite as not important as the Venerable Bruce Morris, who was my understudy until today because he's retiring. Or as the book of Romans calls it, quitting. I would like to start this eulogy, speech, with a reading from the first verse of the 14th chapter of the second book of Kings. And he said, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, but I am a smooth man." And he said, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, but I am a smooth man." Now, at this point in the sermon, it is incumbent on the preacher to lighten the mood with a joke. So how many deacons does it take to screw in a light bulb? The answer is 40, and one venerable deacon to field their phone calls, emails, and text messages to provide guidance on how to screw in said light bulb. I have known Bruce since he was merely a student at the Vancouver School of Theology, and since then, I have kept in touch with him on a biannual basis. Bruce was heavily involved in the massive renovation projects at St. Hilda's, and was also a key figurehead in acquiring the pipe organ for the church. One might say he was quite instrumental. That's exactly the response I expected from this. Bruce's participation in the Remembrance Day ceremonies were very well received by those who routinely go to church and by the non-religious alike, or as we in the Anglican Church call them, heathens. I attended one of the Remembrance Day ceremonies where he was presiding. It was a cold, wet, windy November day, but in Bruce's mind, it must have been a brilliant summer day at the beach, because his sermon went on and on and on. While the community shivered with the wind and rain ripping through them like the winds of a vengeful cod, children frozen in their strollers, the poor but dedicated members of the RCMP standing in agony in their polished high-brown boots as their feet ache while their completely impractical Stetsons flap like a giant windsock. Bruce continued his ramblings well beyond the Anglican Church standard of 37.5 minutes per sermon. I don't know where he got it from. To make matters worse, his sermon was so incredibly obscure, it reminded me of Jesus' letters to one of his lesser-known disciples, Rufus. It was very obscure indeed. While his tenure at the church was fruitful, it was not without controversy. I recall the incident in 2013 when Bruce wanted to change up his business cards to add more flair. He was insistent that I help him pick a suitable theme for his cards. His presentations included, Bruce Morris, I take the vulnerable out of venerable. Bruce Morris, I put the fun back in funeral. And Bruce Morris, I put the can back in Anglican. Then there was the unfortunate event of Christmas Eve 2006, when Bruce found some communion wine that was for sale at an incredible price. I fear that Bruce was misguided and blinded by his other passion of being an accountant. His fiscal responsibility led him astray of the values of the Anglican Church, for which the Anglican Church holds firm regarding communion wine, that the wine must taste good. Alas, this bargain basement wine did not. In fact, it tasted very much like gasoline. The first thing that came to my mind when I heard about this debacle were the headlines that would read, "The blood of Christ siphoned for you." As I was on my way here today, I arrived at the BC Cruise Terminal, by an oversight, I happened to go out by the way one is supposed to come in. And as I was going out, an employee of the ferry company hailed me. "Hey Jack," he shouted, "where do you think you are going?" That, at any rate, was the gist of what he said. But you know, I was grateful to him, because, you see, he put me in mind the kind of question I felt I ought to be asking Bruce here today. Where do you think you are going? Life, you know, is rather like opening a tin of sardines. We are all of us looking for the key. And I wonder how many of you here today have wasted years of your lives looking in the kitchen drawers for this life, for that key. I know I have. Others, they've found the key, or at least they think they have, don't they? They roll back the lid of the sardine tin of life, they reveal the sardines, the riches of life therein, and they get them out, and they enjoy them. But you know, there's always a little bit in the corner that you can't get out. I wonder, is there a little bit in the corner of your life? I know there is in mine. And so now, as I draw to a close, my final parting words to you, Bruce. I want you to go out into the world in times of trouble and sorrow and hopelessness and despair amid the hurly-burly of modern life. And if you're ever tempted to say, stuff this for a lark, I want you at such time to cast your minds back to the words of my first text to you tonight. But my brother